want to talk about Mecates. So what was your question?
Just the different types of Mecates, the different product used to make it. So like
Okay.
mohair or the, like I don't know what ours is, but what's that? Yeah.
So traditionally, Mecates were made out of horsehair. And you'll see they're not all created equal. Some are really nice, and the ones that are really nice are made out of mane hair of the horsehair Mecate variety. The ones that are not so nice are made out of tail hair. And when you first get a Mecate, it's going to be a lot tighter than this one. This one feels really good. But when you first get one, the fibers and just the individual strands of hair are going to be a lot more prickly than this. Yeah. And it might be, because it's twisted hair, it might be a lot tighter. And there's things you can do to loosen it up a little bit. You can actually condition it with regular hair conditioner and lay it over in a big loop and let it dry, and it'll soften it up a little bit. The next one would be mohair. And mohair feels a lot more like yarn. And they'll twist it the same way they do a horsehair Mecate, but it's a lot softer. And it doesn't have the same type of body or feel that horsehair does. So if you try to send, do you ever try to send life up a rope? You can't do it. If it's real raggy, that's what I mean. If it's real raggy and kind of flimsy, it's really hard to send life up a rope. So it's a signal thing. It ends up, if you want to get real technical, ends up being a signal thing for a horse. That's why a lot of people like to use the traditional horsehair. But some people like mohair just because it feels better on their hand. The other thing with Mecates too is you got to be mindful of the diameter of the Mecate. Based upon what you're doing, if you got 60 feet of rope in your hand plus your Mecate, the diameter of your Mecate needs to probably be a little bit smaller if you have smaller hands. And then there's a whole other diatribe we could go down on all that stuff too. Then came along man-made materials, and some of the first Mecates made out of something synthetic was like a yacht rope, which is very similar to what people use for lead ropes now. A lot of people use like a yacht rope Mecate. Or do you guys remember the old poly? It's not that stuff. I'm sure you remember the old poly lead rope they used to use for the web halters. It was really rude. It would just get real stiff after a while. They would use that for Mecates too. And then somebody come up with braiding parachute cord. And braided parachute cord is awesome if it's not braided too tight, because it's parachute cord. It's super durable. And you can wash it almost like clothes, because it's resistant to just about everything. And some people that like to keep their stuff clean, you can wash it. But it's all based on personal preference and feel, and whether or not you want to be traditional, which is a whole nother avenue of conversation we could go down as far as Buckaroo stuff and traditional California stuff, which is where all this stuff started. Anything with a Mecate. So, you guys, this feels really nice. It still has that sort of that prickly feel, but if you can imagine laying that over your horse's neck, yeah. There's a signal property to that. So that's one of the nicer ones I've felt in a long time, and you've been using that for a while. The one thing about horsehair though is it's not an all-weather thing. So, especially in a wetter environment, it can get real stiff and kind of kinky, and yeah. So you'll want to go over to more of a synthetic type of rope. Parachute cord will work really good in a humid environment.
So Carlos, I've never seen the parachute cord with a Bosal.
Yeah, you can do it.
Can you? Okay.
Yeah, you
So
can.
it has enough life in it, the parachute cord?
Yeah. I guess there's a lot of misconceptions with this. I don't know. How many of you guys ride with one of these? Nobody? How many of you guys want to try? You're heading in that direction, right?
Yep.
So
I'll try anything.
there's a couple of things I want to say about these, because people don't know. if you go to buy one and you don't know the maker, take a magnet with you. People make them with a metal core, like a wire rope core. That's a no-no. That's no bueno. You'll see that's very popular in the show horse world,
Oh, yeah.
Arab world. Not good. Originally, these things were braided over a rawhide core. Sometimes they're braided over a latigo, like a piece of latigo leather core, or 2 strands of latigo. They should be soft. They should be supple. You should be able to do this, and it should bounce back. If it's got a metal core in it and you do this, it'll stay this way. The other thing that people don't know is when you're using one of these, is you need to, especially if you have a horsehair McCarty, you need to take it off every time. Every time you're done using it. So you put your wraps on, you measure out your reins. You'll get really good at doing it because you'll have to put it on every time. But you want to take that horsehair McCarty off every time, because what happens with a horsehair McCarty is it has a memory. And if you were to ever, a lot of you guys don't ride different horses, but if you were to ever ride a different horse and you need a different length of rein, if you don't take this off of your McCarty or your Bosal every time and you change the length of your rein, you're going to have a big kink in your rope. And it's kind of like walking around with a piece of toilet paper on your shoe. So when you're done with your Hackamore or your Bosal, when you're done with your Bosal, you don't want to hang it on the wall like this. As you hang it on the wall, say this is the wall. You hang it on the wall, the weight of this is going to push this part of the Bosal up against the wall and this part out on the heel knot down here. And next thing you know, it's going to have a memory and it's going to look like this when you go to take it back off the wall. So you always want it, when you hang it up, you always want to hang it like this, which is, I'm sure, how Cal does it, right? Yeah. So you want to hang it right here. Don't hang it by the hanger. Other than that, it pretty much works the same as a snaffle bit. The only thing is you have to be careful when you take your wraps around the bottom. What I was taught is you need to have 2 fingers between your wraps and the horse's chin. And if you ride your horse for the first time and say you've been riding him in a snaffle for a long time, and then you go and put one of these on him, you kind of have to check him out with it first, because if you have these wraps too tight, they can sometimes feel over-confined because they can't move their jaw open. The other thing is it's not a direct pull like a snaffle bit is. So if you imagine the pull is coming from the bottom of this, in a snaffle bit, when you pull on the right rein, it's coming off the corner of the mouth. On this, what it's doing is sort of rotating it on their face, and it's pulling from this side. So it's contacting this side of their face. So you just have to check those things out when you're riding in a Hackamore. So these 3 things together, the hanger, the Bosal, and the McCarty, is a Hackamore. So this is the McCarty, or Mecate is Spanish for rope, Bosal, and then the hanger. So these 3 things together is a Hackamore. There's another element to these that a lot of people don't know about called a fiador. And a fiador attaches down here, and you use it in conjunction with your McCarty. It goes up, and it goes around the back of the horse's ears, and it's essentially a throat latch for your Bosal. So if you had, back in the day, before they had snaffle bits, before the vaqueros, all they had was this, which was a Hackamore, and this is what they started their horses in. If the horse was bad to lead, that throat latch would keep you from pulling this off their face when you try to lead them. Or say you get down to doctor an animal, or you're roping something, whatever, and you're leading them around by your lead rope. A lot of people don't know about the fiadors, and that's not something you guys will most likely use because all your horses are broke to lead pretty well. The other thing is when you do get down and you do go to lead your horse off in a Hackamore without that, you just got to be careful that you don't pull on them too hard, because you will pull it off their face. One more thing people don't realize and they don't think about. When I was telling you about the wraps on the bottom of a Bosal, how it can feel over confining to a horse, guess what the horse can't do with a Bosal on their muzzle? That's right. They can't yawn. So if you go to working them, which most of the time, if you're working in a Hackamore, you're not trying to do anything too fast or too stressful, because you're just checking them out to make sure that they're pretty good. A Hackamore will expose all your holes that you had in your horse in the snaffle. After you get to riding them for a while, if you've been doing quite a bit of work and you've been, I don't know, trotting, loping, doing circles, whatever you're doing, working a cow, you want to jump off and just take it off them real quick and let them yawn. And you could tell when the horse is ready to yawn. And that's how they do what? They let down, right? So you just want to make sure you remember that. A lot of people don't realize that. And you don't probably want to let them take a drink with this on either. Take it off before you take them to the trough, because you don't want water on this and you don't want excess water on this either. So, but yeah, other than that, these are real fun. It teaches you or shows you where your holes are at. And you don't want to try to be doing anything instantly fast in one of these. You don't want to teach a horse they can run through this. Because once you teach them that, it's pretty hard to get them back.
Carlos, do you want to talk about the shapers?
Oh, yeah. So I sell these things called Bosal shapers, which is basically a piece of 2x4 with slots on either side. And what it does is it mimics the shape of a horse's muzzle. Because a horse's muzzle, the Bosal would be more shaped like that. When you get them and they're brand new, they look like this. And so that Bosal block you would put in there when you're not using the Bosal, just to help it kind of hold its shape. If there's a good core in the Bosal and it's made really well, you won't have to use it for very long, because it'll start holding that shape that it's in already. See, you can kind of already see it. But this is what you want for the feel of a Bosal. A lot of them are, traditionally were made all rawhide. This is like a latigo or maybe a kangaroo cheek with a rawhide nose button and heel knot. And you just want to have a real nice feel to it. So yeah, back in the day, like most of this gear is all derived from the California vaquero. A lot of the gear that's being used in sort of this style of horsemanship, wouldn't you say? So back in the day, that's how they started their horses, was with a Hackamore. So the Anglo or the European came around and they had the snaffle bit. And the way this snaffle bit is set up is sort of the best of both worlds. It's got your slobber straps on it and your Mecates to sort of emulate the same type of setup you would have on a Hackamore, where you have a loop rein and you have a lead rope all built into one. And there's a lot of traditionalists that'll say that you're never supposed to put one of these in a horse's mouth, where I don't agree with that. If you're like traditional vaquero style horseman, whatever, this is a great tool. And I mean, you could ride your horse in one of these for the rest of its life and it'd be just fine.